I would like to introduce the panelists for today afternoon's session and the paper presenters. First, I would like Sister Imelda Poole, IBVM Loreto, who is from UK, has been on mission in Albania for the past 11 years, working in the field of anti-human trafficking, prevention, awareness, raising advocacy, and direct action. Sister Imelda is the president of RENATE, which is Religious in Europe Networking Against Trafficking and Exploitation, which works in all fields against trafficking in 27 countries of Europe. Our next panelist, Mr. Simit Bhagat. He is the Program Officer, Asia for Trust Law. Based out of their Mumbai office, Simit Bhagat works across the region to support their network of NGO'S, social enterprises, in-house councils, and law firms in the region. Our next panelist for today's afternoon session is Dr. Aditi Nath. She is presently working as an assistant professor in the Department of Social Work, Assam University, Silchar. She did her research on partnership between the government and non-government organization of Assam. She's also involved in providing honorary advisory services to the local NGOs. Our next panelist is Dr. Toli Achumi. She's an assistant professor in Department of Political Science at Yingli Government College, Longland, Nagaland. She obtained her doctoral degree from Nagaland Central University in the Department of Political Science. And our last panelist for today's afternoon session is Rajashri Goswami. She is presently pursuing her PhD in Mass Communication in Assam University. She is the co-founder of Women Empowerment and Development organizations, which focuses on empowerment of women irrespective of their ethnicity, culture, and space, by creating awareness about their rights. Now I would like to call Meenakshi to assist Professor Joydev Majumdar in facilitating for today's afternoon session. Our next panelist to be felicitated is Sister Imelda Poole. For our next panel to be facilitated is Mr. Simit Bhagat. Next goes to Ms. Dr. Aditi Nath. Our next panel to be felicitated is Dr. Toli Achumi. And our last is Ms. Rajashri Goswami to be felicitated. So to roll down more for further discussion, I would like to request Professor Joydev Majumdar to take on it. Over to you, Professor. Thank you.
Good afternoon, participants from different countries, different states, our home state. This is the last session of the 2 days conference. We have time up to 3:30, but 10 minutes before we need to wind up because we will have to go to the hall for the valedictory session. We are all patiently and eagerly waiting to listen to a legendary professor from University of Michigan. So it will take another 5-10 minutes to assemble in the hall, and that is why I welcome my panelists. I also request you to restrict your presentation within 15 minutes so that we can get at least half an hour time for interface, some kind of interaction, some clarifications, etc. Okay? The issue is the roles, responsibilities of the NGOs, the civil society organizations in combating human trafficking. Last 2 days, we have been hearing why it is a human rights problem, it's a blatant violation of human rights. In India specifically, the trafficking for commercial sexual exploitation, it is an issue. But the more important is the unsafe migration for labor, the forced labor. That is an immediate issue and a very important issue that has to be discussed over here, vis-a-vis what are the CSO'S, NGO'S, how do they address their methodology of working, any good practice that can be shared. So without wasting any more time, I'd request my first panelist, please come. Sister Imelda Pule, Loreto System from Albania. Sister, may I kindly request you to stick in 15 minutes? Okay. Try, at least try. I'll give you a signal, please.
So good afternoon, I should say, to everybody. And I'd like to just say thank you to Mary Ward Loreto International Calcutta for this amazing privilege, invitation to be here in India. It's the most exciting experience for me and a real privilege. Thank you very much. Today, I'd like to share a few issues about human trafficking across Europe, across the world, and maybe a little bit more in particular in Albania. You see in this first picture, the picture of a woman and a child. Today we're living in a global reality which has more mobility than in any time in history of the world, even more so than in the Second World War. Trafficking is about movement. It's about exploitation. It's about selling the commodity of a human person as a piece of trade. Now I'd like to show you a film that expresses this mobility, the poverty behind trafficking, the issue of the trafficker. It's a very short film. I'd like you to just focus on what the people are saying in this film. Thank you.
Blessed with natural beauty, but the centre of a dark trade, Albania has over 2 decades built up a brutal industry with human beings the commodity.
I hate them, and I want them to get the punishment that they deserve.
Seja, now still a teenager, was just 14 when she was sold into a trafficking ring by a man she thought was her boyfriend. She was forced to sleep with several men a day and tells of a bewildering and terrifying world of abuse in which she could trust no one.
There were the other girls there too, but I did not talk to them, because you could not tell who was connected to whom. We were terrified. They would beat us up and not let us go out. To be controlled by someone, to be used as I was, is totally degrading.
She lives here in a refuge for trafficked women in the south of the country. But these are schoolgirls, and some already have children of their own. All have escaped their traffickers. Seja helped put some of hers behind bars. Several convicted traffickers are held here in Korça high-security prison. Last year, 18 people were sentenced. Some here are serving 20 years or more. The Albanian authorities let us talk to one of them. Fatos Kaplani was sentenced to 15 years for trafficking children to Greece and forcing them to work as prostitutes or beggars. What made him, a married man with his own children, commit such a crime?
Ishte perioda atje që mirë që të gjithë në atë punë.
It was the time that everyone was doing that kind of thing.
Shumë e të mërshme.
You used a child in order to earn some money. Isn't what you did entirely wrong?
Kur të ishte fëmija im, ta mirë të një tjetër kështu.
It's terrible. What if that were my child and someone did that to them?
He faced justice, but Albania's been criticised for a lack of prosecutions, and there are concerns over police collusion. Some senior figures question whether trafficking is a real problem, but the official line is that there are systems to deal with it.
It's not a big concern as used to be many years ago. We have a system in place as we're working, and it's not an increasing trend. It is a phenomenon that is kind of constant, but it has to be tackled properly and to make always all the structures working together.
But it's away from the modern capital city that all too often traffickers find their victims.
Albania remains a poor country, and in many areas a woman's role is still seen as being in the home. Young women in small-town Albania can be easy prey for groomers, seduced by promises of a better life.
That better life is invariably outside Albania, but Anna never dreamt of her fate.
He said he was looking for a girl just like me and he wanted to start a family.
She is now in a safe house in the UK, duped into leaving home and then sold into prostitution. She weeps throughout our interview, but insists she wants to tell her story.
I was somewhere underground. I had no sense of the world around me. They would not let me see. I entered the building blindfolded.
And you were raped every day?
Yes, every day.
Many men?
Yes, many.
Anna is now supported in this safe house run by the Salvation Army. She has a baby, which gives her a reason to carry on. Her story should trigger alarm in authorities here and across Europe. A broken life caused by a brutal crime. Rita Chakrabarti, BBC News.
So trafficking, as we saw so clearly in that film, is a breakdown of the human rights for every human being that exists in this terrible, terrible trauma of evil crime that they are suffering from the abuse of. It's a loss of dignity, it's a loss of worth, and NGOs, if you like, are in the hot seat for being ahead of the governments, ahead of statutory systems to see what's going on the ground. Our NGOs across Europe that we work with always make research before they begin the work. Research is so important to understand what the survivors, the victims, those who are vulnerable to trafficking really feel and what they really want. We cannot just presume to rush into the field of anti-trafficking without listening for a long time as to what are the needs of these people who are so vulnerable and working step by step to make an impact change. If we look at the next few slides, which we'll go through very quickly, you'll be seeing how it is a global phenomenon. The research shows that our women, our girls, our boys are in fact being traded across many borders, from Albania, from Greece, through Turkey maybe, across the Adriatic to Italy, then across to France, Spain, and into England. We cannot work alone in Europe, just like you in India cannot work alone from state to state and even from country to country. In fact, we're now moving into such a globalization that trafficking must be done together. All the networks cannot be just locally. They need to be more and more combined so that law is equal, law is understanding the difference between migratory laws, false illegal migration, to trafficked victims who are in countries illegally but are victims of crime, and so on. But at the moment, many countries are muddying their law because they're not listening to each other. Some laws are changing, some are not. And victims are in the hands of this cross-border conflict of law. And it's just so traumatic for these human beings to be faced by this incredible lack of knowledge, even in the countries where they're facing justice, so-called. So we move on then to look at what are we really doing as NGOs. You know, we are with these women, these boys, these girls, these men who are labour trafficked, and what are we trying to really do? Now, as a Mary Ward sister, which is what I am, my charism is about freedom. It's about justice. It's about truth. And the justice is about allowing a person, every human being, to become the fullest potential of what they were born to become. So, in that sense, every piece of work, whether it's with a survivor, a victim, or a potential victim, is about human worth, human dignity, and enabling through rehabilitation processes or human and economic empowerment to address this issue of full potential for every person that we work with across border or in our own countries. So what is the strategy? We know about these 3 Ps: prevention, protection, prosecution. If we as NGOs do not work together right across border with statutory and non-statutory systems in each country that we're working with, and even cross-border, we fail. We sit in our own little cocoons and we don't realize the potential that could be there for achieving fullness of life. If we go and look at a particular story, we will see that a girl will come, say, trafficked on the streets of London from Albania. Her language is very weak. What happens today is that a psychologist from Albania will actually counsel that girl online until she comes out of her trauma. Not always, but this can happen. So what we're looking at is across use of disciplines as well as statutory, non-statutory organizations, psychologists, social workers can actually be used across borders to support victims with possible language problems. All the time we're looking at how we can work together. And now some of the stories of what we do. This is 2 NGOs in Albania. One was set up by Mary Ward Sisters for Roma children. 70% of trafficked children in Albania are Roma children. And here you have on the left our Roma school. And on the right, we have a women's project with the Mary Ward Loreto NGO in Albania. And here we have 3,000 women from vulnerable villages and periphery areas of Albania, and all of whom are very, very prone to being trafficked by known relatives or people from the local situation who actually groom the girls into loving what they're offering. It might be a job, it might be marriage, it might be a happy relationship, or going abroad away from the horror of their lives in Albania. And here we have the shelters that we work with across border. In 27 countries, we have shelters in all those countries, and many of our members are running the shelters and trying to operate from this basic stand of full potential for every victim, and accompany them right through until they have a job and security and independence. And here, of course, you have the psychology support for these victims. Again, I won't labour on this because we've already discussed about cross-statutory system support, cross-statutory system working together, the legal, the police, always together, never alone. This is a classic story of what would happen. We have an advice centre in Tirana for women working against trafficking. A woman presented herself. She'd been sleeping on the street for 3 days and she was pregnant. And she came with a policeman one day and said that her father and mother had thrown her out of the house and she had nowhere to live. What happened? Nobody would take her in. There was no place, no statutory place or non-statutory place for her. So the sisters took her in. And after 2 nights, this young girl began to kick and bite the sisters. She went out of herself in her trauma. And the only place for her was a bed in the psychiatric wing of the hospital. And there, our psychologists carried on working with her. And each time she had a session, a little bit more came out. And eventually, she was saying certain things that indicated that she had been trafficked. And it was only at that point that she was able to be given a bed in a shelter, when there was medical and psychological proof that she had been trafficked. And this is just one of many, many examples of how girls take time to tell their story, and we need to give them an opportunity to have a safe environment till they tell their story. The impact, as you can see, is isolation. It's isolation and vulnerability and lack of protection. This is our shelter statistics for last year, and it just shows, you can read those quite briefly, but there it shows the physical conditions of the girls and the mental: urinary infections, skin problems, abdominal, renal, oral problems, hepatitis, allergies, gynecological, drug problems, dental problems, hemorrhoids, gastrointestinal, respiratory, eye problems. Those have been mentioned, in fact, in some of our workshops. You know, a brutal man hitting a person in the face and the tooth coming out. This is real stories. And then you have the natural trauma responses to the horror of being trafficked. You have the anxiety disorder, depression, behavior disorder, schizophrenia, epilepsy, and developmental disability. We have, obviously, once the person has reached some kind of control and some kind of happy medium, she's ready for pastoral, ongoing human development and economic development. So she herself goes through schooling, vocational training, skills for getting a job and into work. And at that point, she can move into a flat, or if it's safe, because there has been reconciliation, if possible, with the family. If not, she goes into a flat as a safe place for finding her independence. Just discovering how to use this. Okay, and here we are in Romania, where we work in every country in Europe for trainings and for cross-border planning and action making for anti-trafficking work. And here we're working in labor trafficking, anti-labor trafficking, and there we learnt about the cyber trafficking and the agencies that changed their names between Cyprus, Bulgaria, Romania, and men up to 50 sleeping in one room, one meager, horrible room, changing from one shift to another into the same beds. Horrendous situations. Yes, the traffickers are caught online, but it only takes 3 years, they're back again with another name. We heard in our workshop this morning all about internet and human trafficking. In our projects across Europe, we're doing a lot of work on internet and safe security. And I must say I was interested this morning that there was no mention of psychology. And for us, the actual work for awareness raising is, first of all, helping people to make good choices. If a human person is not self-aware and they're not helped to even interiorize their problems and their issues, they're easily going to be duped in the chat rooms. They're going to have no sense of reflective behavior, of discerned choice making. So all of the work for safe security in internet is based, first of all, on safe choice making, good choice making, discerned choice making. Another big issue that we're into is advocacy and campaigning. Yes, about the law, corporate law, the Nordic model maybe, across Europe. But we're also saying, what about the laundering, the money laundering? Who's chasing the money? Who is actually used for slave labor? We buy Indian goods often, and especially in Pakistan and Bangladesh, we have discovered that some of our corporates are using cheap labor in your countries, in your border countries and in your countries. And really, this is where we've just got to work together. The English new sex trafficking law, anti-trafficking law, is all about modern slavery, and it's all about the corporates have got to be inspected. By law now, all our corporates used in Britain have to be inspected. In Albania, there is nothing like that. Across many East European countries, we are used for the slave labor that this is talking about. Follow the money means cheap goods, but who pays the price? Who pays the cost for the cheap goods? We had a wonderful training in Palermo on border, in Spain, on border control and border trafficking. And Helen Moreno was there telling us about her work cross-border between Morocco and Spain, and the horror of the gang rape that was taking place on the borders as the women wait for weeks and weeks, maybe years, to cross that border for safety. These are vulnerable, ordinary women trying to find a better life, and here they are being attacked in their vulnerable situation by traffickers who then bring in the men to the camp to buy sex. And we need to, all of us, look globally, not locally, at our work in advocacy and campaigning to bring justice to the world and to give a much better strength, stronger strength together to change law and to change situations of human rights when a person has the right to be mobile, has the right to cross borders, has the right to find a better life. And in that sense, we can actually link with the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, which are a target for 2030, that our globe will be ecologically friendly, will be equal between rich and poor, which will give equal rights between women and men. Gender equality is such a huge issue in relationship to trafficking and domestic violence. The SDGs need to be looked at. There are 17 of them. And we all need to wake up as NGOs. We're seeing this is where we have a partner. They are teaching us the way to go. And we need to look at these SDGs and see how we can, in our different situations, lobby the governments, lobby the local councils, lobby the statutory systems to find justice and to follow this code of law that they're trying to bring in. And Pope Francis himself has said, by 2030, let's work together to eliminate human trafficking from this planet. So Pope Francis has seen this. He's in union with the SDGs, with the United Nations, trying to make the world into a safer and better place for everybody. And I finish with this wonderful picture that I use as an icon for myself. This is in Canada, and it's about drumming. And in Canada, we had an international meeting of the Mary Ward Sisters for looking at and discerning mission into the future. And at this wonderful meeting, we were each given a drum. And for a whole morning, we were taught how to drum. And in fact, at the end of the morning, we all had big drums, little drums, minor drums in terms of the width and the thickness of the skin and so on. And he just said to us, this teacher, drum, you drum. And I listened. And amazingly, after a while, I could hear this incredible harmony. It was an incredible harmony. And I stopped and I listened. And I looked, and there in the center of 100 and odd people drumming was this man, the teacher. And he was just doing this. One rhythm, bringing harmony. And for me, in my reflection, mutual loving respect is that rhythm. And if only we could hold on to that as a world, in terms of dignity and human worth, mutual loving respect, then in fact, the rich would share with the poor. In fact, they would sit down together and eat. The man and the woman would see themselves as equal, with mutual loving respect. So I call on us all to really be that main theme through all our work, our main passion, our main focus, so that what we do in advocacy, what we do in self-awareness, what we do in the grassroots rescue, rehabilitation and reintegration is all based on mutual loving respect. Thank you.
Sister Melda described in detail about their intervention in Albania, Canada, and we'll discuss this later. The next panelist, Mr. Simit Bhagat, Program Officer, Asia Thomson Reuters Foundation. Please.
Okay. I know this is a difficult time, especially after lunch. I'm sure we would have needed those drums here at this time. Okay, so I'm Simit Bhagat. I work with Thomson Reuters Foundation. I've been here since yesterday, and it's wonderful to have so many organizations and so many people who have come from different parts of the world. So I've met people from Nepal, from Bangladesh, from various different parts, and it's great that we are all working on the same issue and trying to find how do we kind of find solution to this complex issue. So since yesterday we have been hearing we have heard about statistics, we have heard stories from survivors, we have heard what government agencies need to do to tackle this issue. I attended a session yesterday on climate change and disaster, and how basically that is taking a toll, and how basically that is forcing people to kind of get into trafficking. So I'm really grateful for Mary Ward Social Center, Kolkata, to have organized this and to have given me this opportunity to speak about this issue. So I'm going to be talking about the role of NGOs and what is it that all of us here in this very room can do to tackle this issue in different ways. I'm really grateful that my organization, that is Thomson Reuters Foundation, has been taking a lead to work on this issue, and we are doing different things. We are doing multiple programs to kind of tackle this issue. In fact, as we have been hearing, we all know that this is a complex issue, and to tackle this complex issue, we need like a comprehensive solution. We just can't afford to have piecemeal solutions. We just can't afford to work in silos. So I'm going to be talking about the work that Thomson Reuters Foundation is doing to tackle this. So we have 4 large programs, and we are largely funded by the Thomson Reuters business, and most of the funds that we get from the business and from corporate foundations and individual donors, we plow it back into these 4 programs, all of which offer solutions to tackle this issue of slavery and human trafficking. So we are based out of London, and we do not give out any grants, but most of the funds are invested back into these programs. So I will start off with the first initiative that we are doing, which is underreported stories. Next. So under this program, we have journalists who work for Reuters, and they are based out of different locations across the world. And they report specifically on the issue of slavery and on trafficking. In India, we have about 4 journalists who are based out of different locations. One of them is based out of Delhi, 2 in Mumbai, and then 1 in Chennai. And they specialize on reporting of issues of trafficking. I'm going to be showing you a small video of one of the investigative stories that my journalist colleague Neeta Balla, she had done on the issue of mica and how basically mica was and children were being employed in mines, and there had been many deaths in mica. Sister Amelda mentioned about how corporations are, and we need to do something about them as well, and we need to make them as a stakeholder in this fight. So I'm just going to be showing a short video about this.
वहाँ गए तो कैसे एक्सपायर हो गया, जो बोला सब मैं सुना। बच्चे को हम देखे तो नहीं, मैं देखता है वो बोला कि हम लाश को जला दिए।
नहीं दूसरे कोई रोजगार तो नहीं, जैसे खाने पीने में, कपड़ा लता बच्चे लोग को देने लेने में, कोई कर्ज ऋण है, कोई कर कमेटी है, इसलिए हम लोग सोचते हैं कि चल 2 रुपया हो जाएंगे तो वो फांसी से, वो मजबूरी से हम निकल लेंगे।
So that was the story, Blood Mica, in which we basically, the story looked at the issue of children being employed in mines and illegal mines being run. And mica is the same metal that, so every time we put on a makeup and the shine that you get or the glitter that you get, it's thanks to mica. Or a shiny car that you see, it's thanks to mica, which is used in these products. So this was one of the stories that we did, and this led to a government crackdown on these mines and this issue being investigated. Similarly, another story, which is drowning for sand. It was another story done by my other colleague, Roli, which looked at how basically illegal mines. So in Mumbai, there is a construction boom that is happening. In fact, Mumbai, the real estate prices are so high that every day there are new constructions that are coming up. I wish I lived in Calcutta and I would have had to pay cheaper rents, but so there is a construction boom that is happening, and which is leading to a lot of demand being generated for sand, and which is not being, which contractors are not being able to supply. So they are resorting to illegal means, and illegal mines are being operated, and people working in these mines are working in really pitiable conditions, and they have to actually manually go underwater. They have to dive underwater to get that sand. In fact, there have been many cases of deaths that have taken place of people who are working in the illegal mines. And even this story led to a crackdown and government taking action against some of these illegal mines. Next. Secondly, apart from the underreported stories, we have been doing a lot of work with media agencies and media development work, because we realize that they are an important stakeholder in this fight, and we need to work with them to be able to tackle this issue. We need to sensitize them. We need to bring them on board as well. So we have been conducting a lot of fellowship programs. We have research programs, and we have workshops for journalists in different parts of the world. We also have the Reuters Institute of Journalism, which is based in UK, where many of these programs are conducted. In fact, we also have many media programs for NGO'S. So the idea of working with media is that's our strength. That's the strength of Reuters, and that is what we want to leverage by working with media agencies and by engaging with journalists. Thirdly, we have the Trust Conference, which happens every year around November. In fact, it just happened last week in London. So it's the biggest, it's the world's largest anti-slavery forum where we bring together corporations, NGOs, and thought leaders to come up with specific action points to eliminate slavery and to eliminate modern-day trafficking. In fact, it is attended by more than 600 people from more than 60 countries. So the idea of this event is to get these people under one roof and come up with specific action points. Next. So 3 of the action points that came up in the last few years of this conference, the first one was the Stop Slavery Awards. So again, as Sister Amelda mentioned, that we need to also work with corporations because they are the ones who have large supply chains. And today, if you really look at the supply chains, no corporation can really claim that their supply chain is free of trafficking and free of forced labor. So we want to acknowledge this issue, and we want to work on this issue, and we want to have them on board because if we do not have them on board, then it's almost like a lost battle. So we want to be able to work with them, and we want to recognize, we want to force them to work on this issue and recognize this issue and take concrete steps to eliminate slavery from their supply chains. So we started this award last year in which we recognize the work that corporations are doing on this issue of eliminating trafficking from their supply chains. And they are judged on, they apply for this award, and they are judged on various criteria. The committee of the panel includes the Nobel Peace Laureate Mr. Kailash Satyarthi and many other dignitaries. In fact, one of the awards this year went to Adidas, who has been working on this issue, and they have been actively working on eliminating trafficking and slavery from their supply chains. Similarly, no, the previous one. Similarly, as yesterday someone mentioned that this is the 3rd largest industry, illegal industry, and it's absolutely true. As per international. It has become the 2nd largest. Thank you. So as per the ILO, this is 150 billion per year industry, and it's huge. It's huge money, and we need to be able to tackle with this issue. We need large partnerships. We need partnerships across different geographies. We need to be able to work in different parts of the world to be able to tackle this issue. So one of the other things that we are doing is we are working with banks, and how do we kind of assess data, how do we look at data to look at suspicious transactions, and can we work with banks, and can we look at some of the data and identify what are the suspicious transactions that can be reported to government agencies who can then take action on this. So we are working with some of the largest banks. We are working with Barclays, we are working with HSBC, Deutsche Bank, MasterCard, and different banks, and we are getting more and more banks to work with us on this issue, and they are happy to be able to contribute in whatever way they can to tackle this issue. At the same time, we also realize that as someone yesterday also mentioned, that the conviction rate on this issue is very low. We need to do something about that as well. So the 3rd program is still under development, but we want to also work on litigation, and can we do strategic litigation to get more convictions, to get compensation, to get more compensation, and get justice for the survivors, which can actually act as a deterrent and improve the conviction rates. So that's the 3. Thank you. I just saw the board, 5 minutes left. Thank you for reminding. Okay, and lastly, the next slide. Lastly, Trust Law. And Trust Law is a program that I personally work on. I'm based out of Mumbai. Under this program, we work with law firms and who provide pro bono legal assistance to NGOs and social enterprises. So we have been working with a range of organizations who are working on different issues, right from organizations who are involved in trafficking related issues, who are working on that issue, to organizations working on climate change, environment, and so on and so forth. So if you look at pro bono practice itself, it is very popular in many countries like in US, UK, in Canada. But we are still a long way to kind of get there. In fact, in some of the geographies, it is mandated by the law that law firms have to do pro bono hours. But still, that's a luxury. In India, we haven't reached that stage. But in our experience in the last 5-6 years, we realized that law firms here are happy to do pro bono work for organizations, for NGOs who are serious about the work that they are doing. So do we all know about Prajwala and the work that they are doing? So they had used this, our service, Trust Law service, to tackle the issue of child pornography, because of late we have been seeing that. Okay.
In India, a rape takes place every 20 minutes. Even worse, millions of videos and images circulate the internet, documenting these violent crimes. Paedophiles use social media to compare notes on their sexual encounters with young children. Rapists flaunt their atrocious acts in front of the camera, while their victims are scarred physically and emotionally for life. Yet no legal or technical solution exists to stop videos of sexual abuse from being circulated online. Social media networks and search engines have no legal obligation to remove or to report abusive content shared on their platforms. This is what compelled Sunita Krishnan, one of India's leading human rights activists, and pro bono lawyers from India, Canada and the United States to join forces in a unique cross-border partnership. Together, they worked tirelessly on a mechanism which would hold tech companies accountable for the policing of their channels. Their recommendations were submitted to the highest court in India and were the catalyst behind a Supreme Court decision to create relevant guidelines for the blocking of videos of sex crimes in India.
It was February 2015. There was very concerning video being circulated on WhatsApp. There was this young girl of 12 years who was being raped by 8 men. These were videos of actual rape. I went to the Supreme Court asking for accountability of the state. Also platforms that make it possible for such videos to be playing. And the Supreme Court directed us to get a very comprehensive paper done on how have other countries taken a decision to block such sex crime videos.
Once it gets into the internet, there was no way of holding it back. Soon enough, there would be million views. So Prajwala was looking to a system by which they could be curbed, reported and removed instantly.
It was an ongoing matter and there was immediate direct impact that was visible with our abilities that we could bring to bear.
One of the biggest challenges was the deadline. We were literally on a 1-week deadline. On the face of it, it looked fairly simple, but there were a lot of practical difficulties and we had to look at other jurisdictions, look at mechanisms available elsewhere.
We were able to provide a memo of legal research on all provincial, federal, and state law, both in Canada and the United States. What was neat about this project was we drew in expertise, resources, and information from all different countries. And we were working very closely with J. Sagar and Associates in India. An interesting element of the collaboration was the type timeline with different time zones. So the global nature of the work really required everyone to pull together and work together in a very collaborative way.
I think the nut and bolt of the story is that we were taking on Google, Facebook, Microsoft, the big tech firms who are the regular clients, but they took a position against all these big giants and say, okay, we stand by. And in our mission to make this world a more safe place for women and children, that is what is so unique about this whole process that we did with J. Sagar and Tories. And the note gave a very, very comprehensive understanding, which I think is a very big eye-opener for us in India on what our legislation should look like to deal with this problem.
An expert committee was set up by the Supreme Court to go into the details of the various issues, and that this committee has come up and submitted its set of recommendations.
We are expecting a final directions in the court. I'm very, very sure that tech firms will be mandated by the law to be taking a very clear position and implementable actions.
The non-consensual distribution of images and videos of sexual violence is an issue that's facing every country right now. We believe that the more that this issue rises to the forefront, the faster and more effectively a solution can be reached in order to prevent this type of conduct.
So as we saw, they used basically they looked at what are the best practices that some of the other countries are following to curb child pornography and videos of sexual crime being circulated online. Next. I'm going to skip this in the interest of time. So is there a law that needs to be changed? Is there a policy that needs to be influenced Do you want to know what are the best practices in some of the other countries? Do you want a case law to be reviewed? Or do you have any interesting issue that needs media coverage? If the answer is yes, I mean, just shout to me. Next. That's my email ID. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'm Aditi Nath, Assistant Professor, Department of Social Work, Assam University, Silchar. I'm an academician. Let me be very clear to all of you. I'm an academician, not a practitioner. All of you, I think perhaps we are two only academicians and rest all are practitioners. Anyways, still I would like to end today's presentation, my presentation on anti-human trafficking initiatives of NGOs in Northeast. Basically, in this paper, I'm flagging the initiatives taken by the NGOs, very many NGOs in Northeast to combat human trafficking. And I have colored their initiatives with few of my observations and added few flavor to that with a few suggestions. So this is Northeast at a glance. We have been sharing very many international borders. And the beauty of Northeast is that we have got 7 sisters and 1 brother. And the brother is Sikkim. And 7th sister is this, like it is there, Assam, Nagaland, Meghalaya, Manipur, Arunachal, like this. The 7 sisters, and very recently Sikkim has become the brother. But always we know this, Chand pe bhi daag hota hai. And that's the black hole, is the international borders. Through these international borders, these are girls. Girls of these states are being traded to different other parts. Next. Beyond that, international border, it could be one of the reasons, and beyond that, this economic causes like poverty, unemployment, migration, all these factors already we have discussed and we have been discussing. And social issues, social causes, gender inequality, violence, and corruption, every political causes it is there, like other states. We'll skip this part. So the need of the hour is that prevention. Ultimately, we're looking for the prevention of human trafficking has become the need of the hour. So very many, and these are the pillars of this organization, pillars who can prevent trafficking. And most of the participants of these sectors already they have presented, they have shared their ideas, how they have been dealing with the cases of trafficking. And the NGOs that I have consulted for my today's presentation, most of the organization of Northeast, they have been implementing Ujjwala project. I think you know Ujjwala project, and under this 4 components, all of you are quite aware about it, and one organization that Impulse, they have not been following the, not implementing Impulse Ujjwala project, rather they have developed their own model of intervention. These are the 4 or 5 rather I should say. In the morning some of the presenters, when I was there in the 3rd floor, he was talking about 5P and 5R. It's not that, so for government project is concerned is 1P and rest Rs. Next, under prevention, undoubtedly these are the, like other organizations that have been conducting awareness programs, they have been conducting workshops, forming Balika Balala Sangha as per the project. And these are the few sensitization programs organized by these mentioned NGOs, consulted NGOs rather I should say. And rescue, here, the next photograph is that perhaps you don't know this Baragbili Welfare Development Society. We know very many international organizations, national organizations who are participants of this organization are here, isn't it? You are getting good exposure rather. That's what you are getting, such environment which is very motivating for motivating you to render your best services. But NGOs like these belonging to backward areas, neither they are getting such kind of exposure, not getting support, financial support to render their best services. Despite all these constraints, they have been rendering their services. And the rescue, this is one of the picture of Baragbili Welfare Development Society of Baragbili, Silchar town. They have rescued these 2 girls and others are the office bearers. The next one. Undoubtedly, rehabilitation, as usual, we have been providing the food, shelter. These NGOs, they have been. This livelihood generation program. Under this, they have been providing training on beautician courses, training on handicraft, and reintegration like other organizations. They have been reintegrating their the victims with their family members. This is one of the pictures how they have been reunited after reunition. Repatriation, undoubtedly few organizations that I would like to address you. NGOs that I have consulted, working in the Northeast area, these days they are simply preferring to work on prevention instead of giving much time on rescue and this repatriation, reintegration like this. Very many reasons are there that I will be, this is from my own observation that I will be highlighting definitely. This NGO's perspective, so for this prevention is concerned, they have been working, they have been conducting awareness programs since last yesterday. I have been listening that we need to involve panchayats. But the question is that if we don't get adequate response from the panchayat, how to mobilize them, how to generate the sensitization level, or how to make them aware the importance of the issue. That is that rescue, in rescue what happens most of the time, as the chief functionaries of the NGOs, they share that they don't get adequate support from the law enforcers, especially police department. If any victim directly approach the concerned NGO, then the NGO, through NGO, the case is filed to the police, police or FIR like that. In such situation, they don't get adequate response from them. Otherwise, if the victim directly contacts the police department, then and there, this NGO is being called for counseling to render the counseling services to the victims. This is the allegation made by the NGO people against them. The next one, rehabilitation. What are the problems that they have been facing is that most of the victims, after rescue, most of the victims, they don't agree to undergo this medical checkup, medical treatment, and improper activities of the victims in the shelter home. Most of the victims who are in shelter home, most of the victims are found engaged in different other mischievous acts. They are threatening of committing suicide, that they will be committing suicide. They will file a case against the chief functionaries of the NGO like this. And they will be throwing, they will be hitting, mischievous act, they keep on going, and sometimes it becomes very difficult task for the NGO personnel to manage the situation. And in such situation, sometimes it has been found that family members, they do not show any interest or lack of acceptance by the family members and the society. In such situation, the victims refer to go to have a halfway home. Many NGOs of Northeast, they have constructed halfway home. Victims have been kept there, but they have been facing very many problems from security point of view. NGOs who are planning, they are thinking twice and thrice. So for this security is concerned. Next. My major observation throughout this consultation, it is not new to all of you are connected with this trafficking. It's quite, you are quite aware about it, but my observation is that undoubtedly Northeast India is sharing international borders along with these factors, sure, and these days, trend has been getting changed. We used to say that people belonging, a daughter of a poor farmer, wage laborers, they don't have food, they don't have, house to sleep, means shelter and all, but these days trend has getting changed. Even the girls of Northeastern region, they are going outside seeking jobs. Intentionally, they are, involving themselves in such kind of activities just to earn their livelihood and to earn huge amount of money within an hour and to enjoy all this Facebook, Twitter, all this everything. Glorious this. We can say this is a side effect of globalization rather. And in Nagaland, it has been, impulse that they have conducted a study, this lucrative jobs. Again, jobs to provide, that will be providing with jobs, that will be providing with education, better education. The girls of Northeastern region is getting trafficked. Yes, again, Arunachal Pradesh, a good number of children, minor children, they got trafficked with the promise of better education, trafficked to Kathmandu. In some cases, inside the Northeastern region, they are being trafficked from Assam to Arunachal Pradesh to Meghalaya, Meghalaya to Manipur. Inside the states is happening. This is for statistics. As per the statistics, undoubtedly Assam has become the hub of this human trafficking, and this minor and major minors are getting affected badly in Assam. And so far this Northeast is concerned. Yes, my observation, few observations that I have drawn while consulting with the chief functionaries of the NGOs, that they have been forming this CVG, Community Vigilance Group, Balika Bala Shamiti, and when I asked them how you are doing, monitoring and observation, follow-up, this and that, they are saying that they, due to financial constraint, they are unable to reach that particular villages. Just after forming the CVG and Balika Bala Shamba, they are, over telephone, they are getting informations, how this is working and how this is not. So what I think is that only formation of these groups may not be sufficient to sensitize the programs about the issue. Financial fund constraint, last slide please. Fund concept, that's good. And one most important thing, what I observed is that organizations that are implementing Ujjwala project, these project directors of specific projects, Ujjwala project. I'm not talking about the project directors or executive directors of this NGO, the project directors who is heading this, who is in charge of implementing this project, they themselves are not aware about conceptual clarity. They don't have what is the difference between reintegration and repatriation. Prevention, rescue, and rehabilitation part, they're quite aware about it, but when the question comes to reintegration and repatriation, they don't. This is my simple observation. I think they need to improve in this context. And lack of information. I'm not talking about the other organization, I'm specifically talking about the NGOs belonging to Northeastern region. Lack of information about the other organization who have been working in the similar field. And since they don't have this information, sometimes they fail to ensure the support services from other organizations that would be beneficial for them to rescue the victims. Yes. Next. For guardians, this is one rather I can skip almost all the slides, but this is very important when, so for this Northeast is concerned, minor girls is getting affected, and the school teachers, they are also not aware about the issue of trafficking. At the same time, the guardians, they too are not aware about the issue of this. That's what I'm telling. Let me come to this suggestion part directly. What I'm thinking is that, first one for NGO, the timely, what they said is that they are ready to take very many initiatives, but this due to fund crunch, they are unable to take this to materialize their plan. So this would be better if they are being provided with financial support for NGO, and this NGO meet, so as to make them aware about the services of other organizations, how they have been delivering their services, just to fetch the best result. If we genuinely want to combat human trafficking, motivational camps for the project directors, workshop undoubtedly, and workshop for these teachers as well as parents that I'm targeting specifically. At home, mothers or parents, they need to be aware, and in the school, teachers need to be aware. The next slide. This one, appointment. What I'm suggesting is that I felt the need of that appointment of school social worker at the school levels. Sometimes it happens that since teachers are not aware, even then, due to fear or what, students, they fail to share everything with the teachers. So in such situation, if we can provide the services, we can take the services of a social worker or a counselor or psychologist, that would be an effective one. And after that, definitely in the morning, I have come across with the sir. He was talking about social casework. Since evidence to conduct evidence-based research, along with that, group work is very, I think so, group work is very important for the victims who have been staying in the sheltered homes, to reunite them, to promote their motivational aspect. Family therapy. This is one of the most important. Family therapy is that, I think so, sometimes this interparental conflict, distorted families, single mothers, they are giving birth to this. So that's what it's better to follow on the this family therapy, and better to avoid such kind of conflicts so as to ensure a healthy lifestyle. Thank you all. Thank you.
Now let me invite the Toli Achomi, Professor, Political Science Department, English College, Nagaland. Yeah.
A very good afternoon to all the ladies and gentlemen present here this afternoon. Thank you, Calcutta Mary Ward Social Center, for giving me the opportunity to present my paper, Trafficking in Northeast, the Nagaland Perspective. And thank you, Calcutta Mary Ward Social Center, for giving me the double promotion. I'm an assistant professor. So from jumping from the associate to professor, I have been given the double promotion. As Dr. Aditi has said, most of the paper presenters were the social activists, the social workers, campaigners and all, and we can see only few of the academicians. I'm an academician, and I'll be presenting my research paper from an academician point of view. About the Northeast, the previous speaker has highlighted, and as you all know, the Northeast, it consists of 8 states, which was highlighted earlier in the projector. I'm just going to read out my paper. I'm not going to use any of the projector. So, though the Northeast has plenty of natural resources with biodiversity, hydro potential, coal, and oil reserves, and wealthy forest covers, economically, this region is still lagging behind all the states of India. And the compounding factor for increased human trafficking in this region is that it is surrounded by the international borders like China in the north, Bhutan in the west, Myanmar or Burma in the east, and Bangladesh in the south. Women and children are girl trafficking has increased at the alarming rate. Though child trafficking is prevalent all over the country, the ratio is quite high in the northeast states, Assam being at the top. Cases of human trafficking in Assam usually takes place in the tea garden. Human trafficking in Northeast takes place within the states and across the border of Myanmar, Bangladesh, and Nepal. The reasons are due to poverty, unemployment, illiteracy, and traditional thinking about the women section. The states like Delhi, Mumbai, West Bengal, Goa, Kerala, and even Arunachal Pradesh serve as the largest market for trafficked Northeast women. The trafficked Northeast women are sent to Thailand, Singapore, Japan as bonded labor or a sex worker because of their oriental look. Poverty and economic hardship, unemployment, issues coupled with alcoholism has made most of the parents vulnerable to the lure of easy money in exchange of the girl's life to the world of slavery across the inter-border. Research has also shown that Goa is a destination for Northeast women who are trafficked into various trades with false hopes. Comparatively, among the states of Northeast, Assam has become the hotbed of human traffickers from all over the country. Children from the Northeast, mostly minor girls, are trafficked for being used as domestic helps in metros and are physically abused and sexually exploited as well. The geographical setting of Assam has made it more vulnerable to insurgency, and insurgency problem compounded with the recurrent floods has led to slow economic growth. Encouraged by the aspirations for better livelihood, the state of Assam has witnessed a large number of migrations to the mainland. The migrations are facilitated by the traffickers who introduce themselves as recruiting agents and entice vulnerable people with the promise of a better life. Coming to Mizoram, Mizoram is the first Northeast state to introduce the Victim of Crime Compensation Scheme to curb the evils of human trafficking. However, in spite of the good initiative taken up by the government, the menace of human trafficking is still active in the state. This can be supplemented. In the year 2016, 8 tribal girls from Mizoram who were trafficked to Gujarat were rescued. Meghalaya. Human trafficking has penetrated even into the interior state of Meghalaya. In the most infamous episode, which was in the Delhi paper of the Shillong Times 2017, a local politician who were supposed to be lawmakers, was caught in the human trafficking. In most of the gatherings, hotels and guest houses, it is served as the meeting point for customers and sex workers. Tourism, which is the major industry in the state, has given an impetus to the growth of hotels and guest houses. Yet, the rate of increase of hotels is not in proportion to the inflow of tourists. Coming to my state, Nagaland, it is the source, the destination, and transit state for human trafficking. Unfortunately, Northeast states have become hotspots of human trafficking, and Nagaland has become a hub and a source for human trafficking. The reasons are many. For instance, people's gullibility, ignorance, poverty, particularly in the case of young women and girl children who are enticed with easy money. Girls are lured with promise of education, lucrative job, and other opportunities, and eventually end up in commercial sexual exploitation. There are several cases of interstate human trafficking which are unofficial and go unreported, either because they do not want to expose it because of the social stigma attached to the victims, or they are being ignored. Nagaland is not only a source state but also a transit point for human trafficking from India to other countries. Pangsa, which comes under the Tuengsang district, and Dimapur are in Nagaland are the transit centers for trafficking. Women and children from Assam, Nagaland, and Bangladesh are trafficked through the Pangsa, that is the international border, and then moved out to Myanmar and other Southeast Asian countries through the Golden Triangle. Human trafficking in Nagaland can be divided into certain groups. The first group are the educated adults who are much aware of their rights, but for the ones of luxuries and easy money as well as lack of employment in the state, they become victims of trafficking. They are sent outside the state like Goa, Jaipur, Bangalore to work in massage parlors where they are ill-treated. The second group are those below 18 years, particularly from rural areas that had the potential, capacities, and zeal to study, but because of the poverty and the lack of financial support for education, they become vulnerable to trafficking. The third group are the innocent victims, that is mostly minors who are trafficked and kept as domestic helps. The domestic helps are mostly from the eastern part of Nagaland. And the eastern part of Nagaland, there comes the 4 districts, and from the, as well as even from the neighboring states of Assam, particularly from Dimasa, Kachari, Garos, and Karbi community, they are usually brought to Nagaland as the domestic helps. In Nagaland, there is a huge demand for child domestic helps, and the demand for child domestic helps is promoting human trafficking. It has been studied and observed that Dimapur, a commercial hub, is a hotbed for prostitution. Nagaland is also a place where illegal adoption takes place. The reasons for thriving trafficking are mainly because of the ignorance of the people as well as poverty. Lately, the traffickers in Nagaland have taken a new route to expand their illegal trade. Nagaland is primarily a Christian state where people put their trust in organizations that call themselves religious. Of course, there are many genuine-based organizations that work in good faith that serve the society in the field of education, community development, and health. But again, there are some groups with fact-based organizations and individuals that take the advantage of the ignorant people. The traffickers, well aware of the plight of the people, and operate in the guise of false missionaries and recruit children by luring them with false promises of giving free and quality education. Many poor families from rural backgrounds in Nagaland have been duped, cheated to such acts of traffickers. For instance, in the year 2013, 8 children from Nagaland were rescued from an illegal children's home called Grace Home at Jaipur, Rajasthan, and the home was managed by a man called Jacob who claimed to be a pastor. These 8 children were trafficked out of the state on the pretext that they would be given free education with free lodging and food. But on reaching the city, the children were confined to filthy and unhygienic rooms, starved and subjected to abuse emotionally, physically, psychologically, and sexually by the pastor. Nagaland is silently and gradually become a great concern of child labor as there is fast growth in children employment. Parents and guardians from the remote districts of Nagaland and rural areas send their children to the urban areas, mainly Dimapur, Kohima, and Mokokchung, enticed with the scope of better education and avenues of employment, who are often exploited by the employer.
Dr. Achumi, may I kindly request you, nicely you are describing the nature, the modus operandi, that source destination. But can you please discuss, because there are only 3-4 minutes in your hand, no, not that, interventions. We are interested to know about that, because you are describing the historical issues, the social, economic, cultural issues, etc., nicely. But the interventions, please. Okay. Because however you will get some time in the discussion period, okay. Please.
Okay, I'll quickly get to those points, thank you. And in Nagaland, one person goes missing, that is every 3.5 days, out of which 68% of them are children, and 35% of these victims of trafficking are never found again. In Nagaland, due to the long-drawn political instability, tribal indifferences, rural gap, urban gap, and the lack of conscious political interventions have made it difficult to utilize the abundant natural resources to work towards sustainable development. Shortage of employment opportunities in the state has also lured many educated and semi-educated girls of underprivileged backgrounds with the job offers in economic establishments, massage parlors, and find themselves cheated in the commercial sex trade in metropolitan cities like Bangalore, Goa, Delhi, Mumbai, Pune, Kolkata. Coming to the suggestions from the study which I have researched, Education Department should also improve the quality of education, especially in the interior areas of Nagaland, so that poor parents need not send their wards elsewhere for free education, lest they will make their children victims of human trafficking. Trafficking is a complex issue which cannot be solved only through the political point of view or law enforcement. This needs the collective coordination and efforts of every individual who can together eliminate the problem, because trafficking is a complex issue which is a concern and a challenge in itself. Therefore, all the right-thinking individuals should refrain from using the word choice for victims of prostitution. One need not only sensitize and create awareness to the masses, but also create unity among the stakeholders, government, NGOs, and other law enforcing agencies to curb the menace, as it is not only the consent that matters, but the collective efforts of all. Poverty, gender biasness, as well as rapid urbanization and low awareness are the main factors of human trafficking in Northeast India, so action plans should be implemented to tackle this issue. Proper rehabilitation centers should be formed in an organized way so that trafficking women and child get support and proper counseling. To conclude, human trafficking is ethnically diverse. It knows no borders and barriers. It is happening to all the socio-economic classes. It is disgraceful to all genders and ages, regardless of religious affiliations or country of origin. The practice of human trafficking should be strictly controlled before it destroys our society. The role of religious institutions in the fight against human trafficking is also important. Why? Because religious institution holds a great realm of influence in the society, especially in the Northeast region. Therefore, there is a need to mobilize religious institutions and utilize them as mode to generate public awareness and indulge in community participation. Thank you.
Rajorshi, she is also from Department of Mass Communication, Assam University, but Rajorshi at this young age, already developed an organization. As a moderator, I request Rajorshi that two discussions on Northeast. So we'll be more interested in hearing you about your own experiments, your own ideas, your methodology of working, in the parlance of trafficking. That will be much better. Okay.
No presentation. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Rajashree from Assam. And Today I am going to present, and my topic is quite specific because I am the co-founder of the organization We Do. We Do, the full form of We Do is Women Empowerment and Development Organization. And now we are working with the tea plantation worker, and we are working in the Sonitpur district, Assam. So from the previous day, we are already discussing what the human trafficking is, how it is growing in our society, but I'll be more specific and I'll only speak about its impacts on the tea plantation workers. So before proceeding, I would like to describe about the history of the tea plantation workers of Assam. So the root of the tea plantation workers in Assam is itself based on trafficking. In the year 1839, the company, Assam Tea Company, was formed, and from then there was a recruitment of the tea plantation workers from the other states. Because their colonial masters started to forcefully take land from the tribal people. So those are the people from the Tiwa, Boro and Kachari community. So there was a clash between the British colonial masters and the tribal peasantry. So what they do, they have created a class which is termed as Sardar, and they order the Sardar to brought people from the hunger-stricken areas of India by any means. Specifically by any means. So they used forced labor, they bribed them, lured them, they also told them that there is a better future in Assam, and through this process, they took people to Assam, and after that, the colonial masters, they promised them that the people can go back to their native places after completing their work for like 5 to 10 years. But what they do is like that, they kept them for their entire life. The situation of the tea plantation workers is not very good in this era also, because there is also, because these people are not able to amalgamate with the Assamese society. Assamese people often call them Adha Fatekyal, that means half prisoners. So already there is an inferiority complex among them, and there is they use the Sadri language, which there is a language gap between the Assamese people and the tea gardens community, and there are other issues like witch hunting, alcoholism, which is very much there in the tea gardens community, which is making them very vulnerable towards the trafficking. So my organization, we are basically focusing on to aware them about the term trafficking, because where we are working is the Teen Korea. There is this is a tea state, and the other tea states like Naharani and Tarajuli, in these places, people are not aware about the term trafficking. They don't know what the legal affairs are. So in our organization, we are basically 3 people. So we are trying to aware them about the term trafficking. We are trying to aware them how to lodge an FIR and what are the other legal prosecutions, or if their girl is missing from the community, how they can go to the police, where to inform, everything we are doing. So in Assam, in the last year, there is around 170 girls are missing from the Teen Korea garden. Okay, so now the profile of the study area is that Sonitpur is the 2nd largest district of Assam, and there are various groups are there, like Boros are there, Missings are there, Adivasi is the largest community, also Assamese people are there, Nepali people are also there. And the district is surrounded, sharing its border with Arunachal and Nagaland. So we have conducted a pilot survey to know how to imply the legal policies, what is the right way, how we can aware them. So we have set 3 objectives, like to study the present scenario of human trafficking in Sonitpur, to examine the legal awareness among tea garden workers, and to assess the challenges and solutions in implication of legal policies on trafficking. And apart from that, we are also focusing on media, like how media can help them, how we can use media to aware them. So we have used both qualitative and quantitative methodology. And for this pilot survey, there are 7 blocks in Sonitpur district. So we have chosen 1 tea gardens from each district, and from 1 tea garden, we have chosen 20 inhabitants. Apart from that, we have also conducted focus group discussion, and the members of the focus group discussions were the various volunteers working in the NGO'S, the Anganwadi workers, teachers who have better understanding about the people of the community, and also we have conducted a different focus group discussion with the youngster, the people from 11 to 18 years. And the FGD was conducted in order to discuss about the common livelihood of the people of the community, their societal structure, their dependency on media and law, different problems they are facing, the reason behind these problems, their opinions on human trafficking, and their opinions on legal literacy. So what we have found that there around 36% of the respondents belong to the age group 18 to 24 years in all the tea gardens. 23 belongs to the age group of 25 to 35. 22% belong to the age group of 34 to 44. And the 5% of the population have completed their graduation. 21% of them earn below 1,000. 54% earn 1,000 to 2,000, 1,800 from 3,000 to 5,000, and 700 earn between 5,000 to 7,000. From the in-depth interviews and the focus group discussion, and also from the observation, it has been seen that the poverty is the main cause of trafficking in the tea plantation of workers of the Sonitpur district, because though the PLA, the Plantation Labour Act, has implemented on the tea gardens, but the daily wages of the tea plantation worker is 137 per day. That is in the Brahmaputra Valley, and in Barak Valley it is 115 per day. So also flood is a major cause where flood is a major cause, and this is also one of the reasons why the trafficking is very high in the tea gardens. Apart from them, there is a problem of witch hunting. In the focus group discussion, the people also discussed about the witch hunting is a major problem in the tea gardens, and there is ethnic conflict. As I have mentioned that the Assamese society, the other communities that is present in Sonitpur district, they are yet to accept Adivasi community, which is comprises of both tea garden workers and ex-tea garden workers. They are not accepting them as our society. They are something that communities treating, we have treated them like they are some outsiders, yet till this era. So the ethnic conflict is very high. Recently, after 3 years back, there is a conflict between the Boro and the Adivasi community. So this is also a reason of trafficking in Sonitpur district. Illiteracy is one of the causes, because after Plantation Labour Act, it is true that the literacy level is increasing in the tea gardens, but it is still very low. And when we asked about their media dependency, most of the respondents, which are between 21 to 30 years, they speak up that they follow newspapers and television. And interestingly enough, there's still a wider audience in the community which still listens to radio. And according to the respondents, they are close to media. Media is accessible to all of them. And when we ask about the legal rights, they don't know about their fundamental rights, know any health rights, and they are completely unaware about their legal rights. And when we asked them if the community has been well represented by the existing mainstream media, they pointed out that they are suppressed by media. The mainstream media is not focusing their issues. Yeah. Please, another 2 minutes, please. Okay, sure. Okay, so we have seen that there is problem of alcoholism, the problem of domestic violence, the problem of witch hunting. It's like a network of problem where the trafficking is emerging, because if a society, if a community who are facing this much problem, they are poor, so obviously they will fall prey, they will be victim of the trafficking, because traffickers are looking for easy options, right? So what the tea gardens workers has become easy options. And I have to mention this, that the tea gardens have two kinds of workers. One is temporary and other is permanent. So permanent workers work throughout the year, and temporary workers, they have to go outside in the off season. So what happens, the traffickers come to the tea gardens, they promise them for a better life, for a better job, and they take girls from the tea gardens and they sell to the other states or the other community. So for prevention, awareness is the only way, because what we think that we have to walk from the root, because yes, we can go and ask them like you should do this, you should do that, but the people have to know themselves what are the consequences of trafficking. Okay, they have to know if some girl was missing, where they should go, where they can file a complaint. So that's what we are doing. We are interacting with them every week, with small groups, and each day we are teaching them where they should go, how to file an FIR, etc. So in this, lastly, I would like to say media has a very large role to play in prevent and combat trafficking, because media has the power to craft public opinion. Especially if today, even if we see that social media campaignings are also increasing. Like recently, the Me Too hashtag has taken place, and it is quite. It is very significant in the social media, and media have a liability to ensure that investigative journalism on human trafficking should be promoted. And trafficking is an issue that can be solved by a bunch of professionals if we work together. The media persons, the social worker, the academicians, all. We have to work together, and especially a community like tea gardens worker, because they are already suppressed. They are the root of these workers are itself based on trafficking, so they are very timid. So we have to take very long-term plan to aware them about trafficking, and this is the first step. And further, we have to take various legal policies which are this community friendly. Okay. Yeah, sure. So at last, I would like to say we youngsters have to come forward, because trafficking is a problem that cannot be solved today. But if we took a pledge, like I am from mass communication, someone from social work, but if we work together, the youngsters especially, because already people are working together, the elder, but if we youngsters work together, we can do something, because always there is a hope. Maybe after 10 years, maybe after 20 years, maybe after 50 years, the trafficking can be eradicate from the society. And with this hope, I would like to conclude, and thank you for this opportunity. And it's very nice that we are meeting all here, and it's like creating a network. So thank you. With this, okay.
3 papers from the Northeast region. We have done little injustice to the panelists, because the last session we could afford 20 minutes, sometimes more than 20 minutes. But I have been given a dictum that participants need to be there in the hall sharply by 3:30. So we will take another 5 minutes from here to go to the. So I'll have to finish by the 3:30. I'm sorry. I feel sorry for the panelists. However, we can take up few questions. Yeah, yes, please, Junaid.
Since you are talking very passionately about the issue of the girls from Northeast, and you mentioned about the massage parlor, so I would like to know that have you or anybody in Northeast conducted any study on the volume of girls going for this trade, and why are they going? What are the socio-economic backgrounds? Because what I can share, I stay in Gurgaon. I don't know how much idea you have of Gurgaon. On just the road where I stay in Gurgaon, on Sona Road, there are 250 massage parlors. Okay? And 80 to 90% girls from Northeast or Nepal. So you can imagine how many, and there's no study, there is no information. Once in a while, police would round up one of the massage parlors, arrest a few girls and few customers, and they are all hiding their faces and going like this, and camera clicking photo. Next day you see in the newspaper that one massage. But on that very floor of that mall, there are 18 others. So this is only one specific, so some information from
Junaid sir. So it's not a question. You are rather supplementing.
Yeah.
You are giving additional information.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
So
that's good.
Yeah.
Massage parlors are not to be taken in a negative manner. We all know that.
That's
but
good.
people are misusing it.
Okay.
So recently, apart from Gurgaon, from Rajasthan, 2 months back, a Naga girl was rescued from the massage parlor and then was brought back to Nagaland. And some course of rehabilitation and counseling has been taking place. That's it. I'll just be specific. We can negotiate, communicate, collaborate later for that, because I have to keep the interest of time. Yeah.
I'd just like to add with Madam. I think, sir, you asked about the study, whether any study has been conducted. Yes. Yes, fine. That the study, and during my deliberation, I already mentioned that a study has been conducted by an NGO, an NGO, because government departments, they are taking less initiative, and NGOs, they are taking initiative but not getting support from the government. Anyway, the finding of the study is 80% of the northeastern girls are being, trafficked for sexual exploitation, and 20% for forced labor. This is the statistics and the findings after this study of the findings.
Actually, in Kolkata, we have seen in Topsia, Tiljala area, the children are coming in different state of West Bengal or Bihar, Jharkhand. They come for the child labor purpose. So how we could combat this child labor or as a child trafficking purpose? They are trafficked for the child labor. So what will be the role of the NGOs?
The question is, Kolkata characterized by certain urban street urchins, child labor. However, how the problem of child labor in an urban setup could be addressed? This is the specific question.
I can only give a comment from Tirana and from the Ukraine. And in Tirana, what is happening is there's a big network has been set up in Tirana, but it covers all the NGOs all over the country, because child trafficking is really bad in Albania. It's, we have something like, and remember we have a small population, but we have something like 17,000 children begging on the streets or being used for petty crime. So OSCE... Begging on the streets? Yes. There is a law against it, but I'm afraid implementation of the law is very weak in our country. So what is happening is OSCE and Tez Dahom has linked in with this big network to do this exploratory research in order to lobby the government to implement law, and consequent to the pushing to the government that doesn't implement law very well. In fact, the police are now involved in actually taking the children off the streets. And this is a very sad situation, really, because we haven't got the systems in place for adoption or for foster care or for proper homes for these children. So what you've asked is, for me, a very difficult question to answer effectively, because you've got to have everything in place to implement law. And in weak countries where there's very high corruption, which is what we have, it's very difficult to implement law, and the police get very overwhelmed and often get involved in the crime.
So I am working in Kolkata in an NGO, Bitan, but I'm basically from North Bengal, tea garden based my home in North Bengal. So what I found there is in the conditions of tea garden in North Bengal is very much dangerous and very rigorous conditions, and this is happening due to closing of tea gardens and closed tea gardens, and malnourished children are there, very starvation's problem. So what is happening? We are seeing that the number of children are going out for work, and they are being migrated, being trafficked. So what is the role? What role should be played with the NGOs? What are the role of the NGOs or CSOs to overcome these situations?
Yeah, in Assam, the closing of tea gardens is not a problem, but since you are asking, because what we can do is like, first we have to talk to the management, okay? Because before closing the tea gardens, we have to make sure the management provide shelter homes or some other places where the children can go, or they managed other works for the tea gardens worker, because they are already poor, okay? So if the workers are live like that, they will be more vulnerable towards trafficking. So we have to talk to the management first, because they are already under an organized sector. So first we have to talk to the management to provide a home or provide some places where the children can be kept, or where they have to go to the school or something like that. First, management have to take place.
But the actual situation is North Bengal is different. There is problem with the management and government level.
Okay.
So what we are trying means, I was engaged in the NGOs, but the situation is different there, because not government is collaborating, not in management is collaborating with that workers and that.
Yeah.
So that fails them to bounds them to migrate and for in search of work, and then that tea garden workers, laborers, there.
No, I think tea gardens would become again another thing, because the tea garden sector, as we know, it's, all the workers, the laborers in the tea garden are mostly indentured labor. They don't belong to the area. The tea garden, I mean, they have lots of laws and all, but I think only 40% of the laborers are permanent. The rest, though they may be working for generations, they are casual. So it's a very complex situation, and it is true there's a lot of trafficking happening through the tea gardens.
Okay. That's a good addition. Assam, in the Dibrugarh and Tinsukia, these are the two districts where in the plantation has the highest concentration. I request Rajoshi to speak to Assam Chai Mazdoor Association. I would like to request you to speak to Abita. Abita, what is their role? In your paper, you did not discuss about the Assam Chai Mazdoor Association and Abita. This is a very, very renowned and very well-established organization. And the people on the other side of the tea gardens that you have mentioned, 80, 100 years back they are settled, as Madam said. Many of them do not possess even the voter ID card. Okay, so that's the problem in the tea garden. Okay, any other questions?
So there were two questions. I just wanted to, you asked about the role of NGOs. So like I mentioned in my presentation, we have journalists who are located in different parts of the country. So if you as an organization have very specific instances of trafficking happening or any sort of child labor happening, if you know of any specific instances, you can come to us. I can connect you with the journalists that, although they are very independent and they take their own call whether they want to do the story or not, but I'll be happy to connect you with them. And
this is Payal Mukherjee from Justice and Care.
My question is based on today's topic, that role of NGOs and CSOs. I really want a suggestion from either of the panelists, whoever will be free to answer me to this. That is, which Dr. Nath, you have, I really felt really good that you have slightly covered, that is involvement of Panchayat. We are always, for prevention of human trafficking, I specifically work in the community, core community, where we always sensitize, because there is no other option left to sensitize and aware. So in one case, it's a personal experience, and it has, we are still suffering. We cannot go forward. That is, if we all know that in ground community level, government stakeholders are existing, it is just the opposite side. I'm sorry to say, it's really feeling bad to share being also a part of Bengal. That is, government stakeholders are equal, I mean, they're just the opposite coin of criminal network or anything, towards that, malpractices. So in that case, if any Gram Panchayat of that community, or maybe a Gram Pradhan of that particular community is like this, not convinced, even after a lot of requests or a lot of, just to know about how we work, for the good sake of the community, even though if he is not agreeing, being an NGO worker, what could be our way of penetrating to the community? We have failed, let me tell you this, we have failed taking permission from the higher-ups, his higher-ups, even from the DM, but we have failed. So what can we do in that case?
So the can I respond to that? Yeah. In our NGO, we've made a decision to train not just the staff, but all our beneficiaries and leaders of our project groups, which is men, women and boys. We work with men, women and boys in anti-trafficking. And we've trained them in broad-based organising. And broad-based organising stems from a man called Saul Alinsky, who in fact President Obama was trained under as a lawyer. And it's about community organising and bringing the power of the numbers together on one particular issue that you want radically changed in your community according to the law and implementation of the law. And little by little, it's quite incredible how little changes are beginning to happen by large numbers in village communities are beginning to speak out against the injustice in their local situation. So I would encourage everybody to start working at civil society organising, start from the bottom to get change at the top.
See, at the community level, it's very tough if you go as a, if you go and say, okay, stop trafficking. So no Gram Panchayat or no head is going to listen to you. You will have to, and I experimented this in last 8 years in a program where all over the North Chobis, for South Chobis, Diamond Harbour 1 and 2, we did this in 100 villages. We brought masked projects. You have to take up real social issues like education, for example. You can have a large-scale education program where you will have to cultivate a large team of workers and then train them into intervention. This is IIM Ahmedabad's Impact Girl Child Education Initiative. It's CINI is doing. CINI is doing it. There are a large number of. Yeah. So that structure. This is a supplementary program to education, because home tuition is not there in villages. So when children come from school, they need supplementary education.
No, sir. We have more than 8,000 primary schools.
Those half of the children are not in those schools, sir. So these schools, yeah.
Professor,
so I believe these schools are failing. That's why children are reaching and they're getting in the hands of trafficker. So I'm just giving an example. It can be any other program. It can be health intervention.
I would
Yeah.
just like to say, just 2 minutes. That is, I am talking about the incident in South Chobbish Pargana, which recently happened. And of course, we didn't go to
Yeah.
say that we want to prevent trafficking.
Yes.
We know that.
Yes.
And we went with the health organization for mother and maternity health and all that.
Yes.
So over there, literally, it was also said we had to come back halfway of our survey because we were on the gunpoint. They literally told
that's
that
what
we
I'm
will
saying.
shoot you if we
I-
see again we are here.
Yeah. So, sir,
like that.
it's
While it cannot be generalized because Dilip has a different experience. Our
Sir,
right track Junaid sir has a
sir,
different
just
experience.
at the time
it
of
cannot be a
elections,
generalized one.
sir, at the time
Okay,
of
sir,
elections
we'll
in
have to
West
finish,
Bengal,
sir. We'll have to
Trinamool
finish.
villages and CPI villages, we were working there. All our projects were closed.
Okay.
They said if you work in Trinamool part of the village, we will kill you.
Okay, please, don't take this issue.
No. We went through that. In
Okay,
100
actually, we have crossed. Now it's my role. Just a minute. To convey my gratitude, my thanks to Imelda Madam, Simit, Aditi, Toli, and Rajosri for making wonderful presentations. And some good questions were coming up. However, the time is a major constraint. We'll have to go down and we'll keep on interacting with each other. I will advise the conference secretariat to create a Google group to have constant interaction. I had number of questions to Imelda Madam. Okay, I'll try to do that in the tea period. Okay, yeah. Okay.
One last question, sir, because I feel it's very
10
important.
seconds.
Yes. So we have, in terms of trafficking and in terms of our government is doing a lot. AHTUs are being made, but in paper, not in place. We have block BLCPCs, CPCs. As per the ICPS, we are
Okay, what is
making
the
it.
question, ma'am?
The question is, what do we do? We are, as NGOs, we are, building all these mechanisms, putting all these mechanisms in place.
That's good.
But government is the funding is not coming in place. So how do we even work for this such a big thing?
That's
These
the
are,
big problem.
yeah.
That's a big problem. Funding for strengthening these
systems
CPCs at the grassroots level is a major problem in our country. Okay?
I would like Professor Joydeep, sir, if you can kindly hand the certificate to Rajashri. I would like to request Sister Imelda to hand the certificate to Toli. Thank you very much for your participants, and kindly collect the certificates and booklet from the help desk.